it. That's what I'm talking about.
Wait. Okay, now, from the beginning.
Hit it, boys.
Welcome to the human side, managing fear, change, and skepticism as it relates to AI, a brand new 5-part pulse check series from Enrollify. I'm Carrie Phillips, CCMO at UA Little Rock. In this series, we're talking about the human aspect of AI, how we create cultures that are open to this work, how we bring people who are maybe a little unsure about AI as part of our journey, how we manage fear and manage change. This is going to be a great series, so let's jump right in. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Higher Ed Pulse. Today's conversation is bringing a perspective that is incredibly important as we think about AI, and that is the community college lens. Jeff and I first connected online and then finally met in person last year at AMA's Higher Ed Symposium, and what stood out right away to me was how grounded and practical his thinking is. You know, community colleges don't have the luxury of chasing every new trend. So conversations about AI tend to be less about the hype and more about what actually works when you have limited time, limited staff, and limited resources. So this conversation is going to really focus on how these tools can be helpful, how to mitigate risk, and of course, how to be thoughtful in the approach. And so Jeff is one of the good ones, and I'm so thrilled that you're joining us. Thanks for making the time.
It is great to be here. Thanks for having me.
So I'm just going to jump right in. You know, community colleges, we hear it all the time. They have to do more with less. So how does that reality really shape the way you think about AI adoption?
Well, you're right when it comes to more with less. But I would say pretty much anybody listening would say, well, I have to do more with less too, right? So what makes us necessarily different? And I think probably a lot of it has to do with the size of the institution, the size of your team, specifically when it comes to marketing and communications. You know, there's only 4 of us in our team for about 3,500 FTE. So that's quite a big difference from other schools, which might have 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, depending on the size of your institution in your realm. And so we really don't have the luxury of having some of that slack and experimentation time that other folks do. And so we kind of lean on watching how some of these use cases happen. So with the bell curve, we're following along behind. Some of my colleagues are farther behind, but those of us who have adopted it really we're trying to see some practical use cases and then start to tailor it for how we would need it for our respective, job functions.
That makes tons of sense. And I'm curious too, from a community college perspective, you mentioned that idea of you're watching what some of those 4-year institutions are doing and then following behind and tailoring it. What is it from the community college as it relates to AI that feels the most different compared to your 4-year counterparts?
Well, not being in the 4-year, it's kind of hard to totally assess that. But I would definitely say when you look at the general missions of our respective institutions, we're very applied. You come in here, you get to where you need to go, and whether that's a job, whether that's upskilling, whether that's transferring to another school, whatever the case is, we're very much as straight of a line as we can be from where you are to where you want to be. 4-year schools are often more about experimentation and exploration, and even their missions with their faculty and their research and the things that they do. It's more outwardly focused, exploratory. So when we look at things, it's about what's the practical use and how can we get there. That really impacts how we tackle those things. And so when we are using it, it is very, very purpose-driven as well for us to tackle, those kinds of specific things. It's more end results focused and less exploratory.
I assume, just like everybody, when we start talking about AI, people have thoughts, opinions, sometimes concerns. And so, when AI enters the conversation on your campus, what is the first kind of concern that people are thinking about? Is it cost, capacity to explore, trust? Like, where is that kind of pulse check with us?
I would say in our case, since we don't have some of those aspects out there, and I'm not saying that we don't have champions within the community college realm and people who are power users, we do. But they're fewer than perhaps in other institutions. And so when AI comes up and how are we going to use it, less of that perspective might be in the room. And so it's going to default towards security and all the things that surrounded that aspect, PII and all those kinds of things. And even a lot of the academic perspective comes in. How are they using it in the classroom? as a practitioner, as a supporting function of the college, we look at things totally differently.
Yeah.
And so I think a lot of that is those conversations. We haven't had enough of the real power user advocates on the practicing side. Again, those of us in marketing, those of us in the admissions, financial aid, the business office, foundation development, all these ancillary functions, we use it differently. And once more of those folks are coming in, we have that insight that we can help guide more of a forward direction with AI usage.
Hey folks, if you want to stop talking about AI and start using it for real results in higher ed, you've got to check out the AI Engage Summit brought to you by Element 451, happening online February 10th and 11th. This isn't another snooze fest webinar. It's packed with practical tools, jaw-dropping insights, live demos, and strategies you can plug into your work immediately. Leaders are coming together to decode how AI can boost engagement, personalize student experiences, and transform workflows. Did I mention it's free and completely virtual? Head over to element451.com or check out the link in the show notes and snag your spot. Now, back to the episode.
Seeing some of those use cases and seeing how it makes sense is going to kind of set up the environment and the culture where it's a little more looked at broadly. So I'm curious, take us behind the curtain. What's an AI use case that your team or community colleges should be thinking about?
A lot of times you're going to get it from two different perspectives. If you're fortunate enough in your organization where you do have the capacity, the trust, or the charge to start using AI, you're going to do it one of two ways. You're going to do it to find ways to really impact the work that you do, or you're going to use it as a thought partner. I'm a really big fan of the Eisenhower matrix. So basically, how much can we impact, or how much are we going to, as far as how it's going to impact our effort? So we want to do things, can AI help us with a better impact with the work that we're doing, or can we have the same impact and put less effort, less resources, we can spread things out more? Those are the big parts that I think that we're able to tackle with that, and that's where our use cases typically come from. My case specifically, I think I have matured in the work that I'm able to do by years. You can give me 2 or 3 hours of working with an AI, and I iterate so much faster. Otherwise, we might have a challenge. Here's an example: SEM planning. Everyone's always working on their strategic plan, their enrollment plan. What is the optimal enrollment? Those kinds of things. Well, you have a meeting this month, and you talk about some things, and you come back, and then you meet next month, and then you come back, and then it's Christmas, and so you're off for a month, and then you come back. It takes us months. I could put together some sort of a recently thought out plan in a couple hours and bring a real useful, a working document with notes and explainers of how I got there. And you can see how just light years can move things forward. So that's a use case that I'm working on in real time, actually, right now with our team.
There are lots of ways you can look at it. And I love that you mentioned the Eisenhower metrics, because I think that gets at the core of today it's AI, tomorrow it's going to be some other cool tech thing. And previously it was something else. And so that kind of metrics transcends all of this, that matrix, because it helps us look at this from a change management and change perspective lens. And I think that helps us as leaders to be able to, regardless of what the thing is that we're implementing, because there's always going to be something, to kind of think through it in an intentional way. And I'm also curious how you're thinking about what you decide not to do. AI, there's so much, you could just almost chase your tail with AI because there are so many tools, so many options. How are you, with limited time and resources, making decisions about what you aren't going to pursue?
Well, I think it still comes back to that matrix. The things, it would be great to play around with Sora and all of the different, real fun. I'm not going to say they don't have a practical aspect, but in our case, if you have a team of 10 and everybody has 1 hour to play with, I have a team of 4, I have 1 hour to play with, you have 6 more hours to do stuff. And so really in our case, do we think it's going to have a real application for us relatively soon? So that automatically puts a lot of things on the shelf. We're not going to touch. Not because we don't want to, because it just doesn't fit into our workflows to be successful. So again, that's going to be, we don't have the luxury of developing this really beautiful animated cartoon version of our mascot running around campus. It's amazing. And some people can do that, but I got to tackle these other things first before we can get to that level of creative use.
I think your practical approach is really important, but I also think it's important to be practical about and real about the idea that there are sometimes skeptics in the room and colleagues that have real core conflicting opinions on AI. And so, as you're encouraging your team to play and explore to hopefully save you time, how are you bringing those folks along with you that are maybe a little more hesitant without overselling it, but also not creating pressure if it's something they're not comfortable with? How are you balancing that?
We had a situation like this that actually happened just this past fall. We were fortunate enough to be named one of the Aspen Institute's top 200 community colleges this year. Really quickly, that's based on outcomes for students, and it shows that schools are doing things well. We got to apply to become an Aspen Prize finalist. Massive application, 30 questions, word limits, referencing data, all this kind of stuff. Bring the leadership team together to put this thing together. And the folks around the table, some of them have master's and degrees in English, and they've written a book, and they've done this, and they're like, I'm a writer. I'm going to do this myself. But how does one really, in a short amount of time, coordinate all those answers, cite the data, and have a narrative that really flows together from question to question? AI is it's custom built for that. So when I brought that tool in and we work with it, there were some folks around the table who didn't have that experience. And so I'm going to write my own. Well, you can write your own, and we bring it in, and then we look, oh yeah, these are disjointing, three people offering three different things. How do we bring that together? So it was sort of a, let the problem be the teacher. I'm here. Oh, I realize I can see how I can still bring my skills and expertise as an English major or whatever that might be, but still use this tool, and we can see how we took what might have taken multiple weeks down to a couple weeks. That's a real use case that had big implications for us as an organization because of what's on the line for the Aspen Prize and the Aspen Institute.
Well, for the record, I'm saving let the problem be the teacher. Like that is gold right there. So thank you for sharing that with us. As we think about community colleges and kind of our last question, if a community college leader wants to kind of make one smart, low-risk kind of toe dip into AI, where should they start?
You need to identify some people who can be champions and power users. Certain areas of the institution are going to lend themselves more likely to be able to iterate and try, like the marketing folks who have to do creative, this and that and the other. It might be easier for us to lean into that and do it and have us work on some specific things that we can start to measure. If we internally are able to show that the quality or the efficiency of our work is improving, we can bring that back, and we have actual measurables that can show, wow, their work is better, or whatever the case is. Then we can show that up to leadership and share that learning across other folks, and they can apply that to their functional areas. So if you have to start small, pick a few folks who can take it and run with it and are motivated to do it and learn on the fly, and then roll what they've learned into other aspects of the college.
You heard it here. Such great advice. Start small with champions. Jeff, thank you so much for taking the time today and bringing such a really clear, practical perspective about AI and how it looks in the community college space. This was a great conversation. Everybody, that's it for today, but of course, carry on.
The Higher Ed Pulse is part of the Enrollify podcast network. If you like this podcast, chances are you'll like other Enrollify shows too. Our podcast network is growing by the month, and we've got a plethora of marketing, enrollment, and higher ed technology shows that are jam-packed with stories, ideas, and frameworks, all designed to empower you to be a better higher ed professional. Our show helps higher ed marketers and admission pros find their next big idea and features a selection of the industry's best as your hosts. Learn from Brian Gross, Eddie Francis, Jenny Lee Fowler, and so many of your favorite leaders in higher ed. Enrollify is made possible by Element 451, the next generation AI student engagement platform, helping institutions create meaningful and personalized interactions with students. Learn more at element451.com.